If you are a customer experience professional looking to deliver a rock star customer experience, then you are in the right place, because today I'm going to be talking to Yiannis Maos about Net Promoter Score, and really how we can stop looking at the detractors so much and look more about the promoters and what we can actually do with the promoters to help grow our business, and talk a little bit more about the old school idea of word of mouth marketing as well. So I think we're just going to get straight into it, and by the power of the little magical internet fairies, we should be able to be speaking to Yiannis right now. Yiannis, can you hear me?
I can hear you, James. Hello.
Perfect. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right, man. Doing good. Look, let's get straight into this. Introduce yourself. Let the people watching know who you are, what you do, and what you're all about.
Okay, so I'm Yiannis. I've worked in customer experience for 15 years now. I'm the strategy director and co-founder of Alchemy, a customer experience and technology agency. So we help brands understand their customer experience strategy, but also look at kind of innovative ways they can use technology along the customer journey.
Perfect. So look, as you know, and as many other people know, I'm not a massive fan of NPS, but it seems to be one of those things that happens it's almost, I don't want to call it a necessary evil, but I can't think of a better phrase, so I'm going to call it a necessary evil, where everyone else is doing it, so you feel like you have to do it. So you get in all this data. So what I want to know really is, how can you make the most of it? Because of course you're not just going to ignore it. You don't want to waste your time while you're doing it. But if you were trying to explain to me the real benefits of NPS, so cutting all the crap about it, but what are the real benefits of NPS?
So I think that, look, NPS it's been seen as somewhat of a vanity metric recently, and I think that's somewhat unfair. I think that the research and the theory behind Net Promoter Score is sound, and I think used in the right way, a lot of organisations can take advantage of it. But I think, like customer experience, what we tend to do is go straight to kind of a problem. So that being the detractors and how we stop customers from churning, instead of looking at the other side of the spectrum and looking at promoters. So, you've got all these people who are taking their time to say, we are likely to recommend you. They're scoring the organization, sometimes a 9, sometimes even a 10. And all organizations are saying is thank you. And for me, that's a crying shame. What if, we could actually mobilize these advocates and say, that's fantastic. You want to recommend us. So if we give you a personal offer, if we give you the opportunity, would you be so kind as to share the feedback, share that positive word of mouth online, collaborate with us and engage in a different way, so we can kind of involve you in the co-creation of some of our products and services. I think that positive word of mouth and kind of mobilizing those advocates is where Net Promoter Score can go from a great mechanism to one that can really transform organizations.
Okay, so I mean, you talk about people focusing a lot on detractors. What are some of the and not focusing on the promoters and turning them into advocates? What are some of the dangers for companies if they only sort of focus on the detractors, if they only focus it on the negative stuff?
I don't think it's so much of a danger. I just think it's a massive missed opportunity. I think that we are obsessed about kind of solving problems, and I think to some degree customer experience is still misunderstood as customer service 2.0. So it's all about kind of problem solving, whereas actually kind of customer experience can be an opportunity to engage on a deeper level with customers. I suppose I'll pose a question here to the audience. When was the last time you ran a customer journey mapping workshop where customers were involved in it? We call it a customer journey map, but it's a very internal mechanism, and it's something that we sometimes, if we're lucky, collaborate with different areas of the business, but it's very rare that we involve customers in the creation of that. So for me, it's about kind of looking more towards the positives of customer experience now. I think that if you're not solving problems, if you're not stopping detractors from leaving your organization, then you're probably 4 or 5 years behind. If you want to be an organization that's at the cutting edge of customer experience, now is the time to start focusing on the promoters.
Okay, so I'm with you on that. If you are doing MPS and you are getting promoters, then really you should be doing something with it. It's not good enough to just go, yeah, we got a 10 and then give yourself a pat on the back. Really, you want to build on that momentum and use it to your advantage. So what do you feel is the best way to actually engage those people?
Well, I think, looking at word of mouth, there's 3 different types of word of mouth. So we've got experiential word of mouth, consequential, and intentional. So looking at kind of experiential, that's all about kind of mobilizing kind of word of mouth advocates who have already told you about an experience along your customer journey. So it might be a customer that says, you know what, James, I've engaged with you and the service you offer is second to none. And that will just naturally happen, and people will kind of go, and tell others about the experience. The other side, consequential, is when you start to kind of form marketing campaigns that kind of engage on an emotional level. And when you kind of achieve this, so a good example would be the Cadbury's adverts with the gorilla. That advert engaged on such an emotional level, Cadbury's then started to kind of think about, well, what if we could get customers to do their own versions of that? And therefore the campaign became, viral within a matter of weeks. And that message, and that word of mouth completely overshadowed the advertisement itself. And, the ROI from the word of mouth part of the campaign was 2 times stronger than that of the actual advertisement. So there we can see kind of just one example of what it can do. The last one is intentional, and that, I suppose, is where we're looking at more at our influencers. So who are the people that talk about the brand with, that we can actually kind of encourage to do more of? So are there kind of celebrity endorsers? Are there bloggers out there? And it's about finding these people and giving them the right tools that they can actually start to talk about your brand on a better level.
So is this something you could do even if you're not using MPS? Is it still something where you could be finding people that are saying good things about you or that are coming to you saying good things? Is this still a mindset you could or even should take when anybody shows favor in your company or products or services?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that the Net Promoter Score is look just one metric that you could do to measure this. I think we've got customer effort, so kind of customers that are finding it really easy to do business with you. It's been proven that effort's a great proxy of loyalty as well. Then you've got obviously customer satisfaction. So you've got lots of different kind of mechanisms to measure this. But for me, it's about identifying people who are actually doing this already. They're the people on the forums, they're on Facebook, they're on Twitter, and they're helping other customers solve problems. So one company that's really doing this better than any company I've seen is Simba mattresses. So if you look at kind of forums, if you look at Facebook, you've got customers telling other customers about the product, about the specifications, what it's good for, which model they want. So the brand actually has reduced the customer service costs by actually mobilizing and empowering their customers to do the service aspect for them. Another company that's doing this really well is giffgaff. So giffgaff, again, incentivize customers to actually deal with customer service queries on the forums, on their community pages. And the more people get involved, the more they engage with other consumers, the more they get back in terms of money to spend on voice, text, or data. So this type of marketing is becoming more and more popular. And if we look at it, it really does 2 things. It encourages people to kind of get involved with the brand, but it also reduces marketing costs because you're not having to spend as much on advertising. And, as I said before, word of mouth promotion actually delivers better results than traditional advertising.
Okay, so I really like the idea of using your customer base to be essentially your customer service department. If let's say there's people out there that like that idea as well, how do you go about starting something like that?
I think a great way to do it is starting to form a small group. So find 10 to 20 customers and start to form a marketing campaign with them. Start to ask them for some of their ideas, pose problems to them and involve them in the creation of it. I think kind of, collaborating in the truest sense with customers can be really powerful. They're the ones that are experiencing our products and services every single day. They're the ones that are actually the experts. I speak to a lot of people in marketing and customer experience, and it never fails to surprise me the amount of people who don't really test the products and services and use their own services day in, day out.
Yeah.
And we've got customers there that are already doing that. So by involving them in the creation of marketing campaigns, they're the ones that can articulate your brand promise, your brand messaging in the right way to the rest of the audience.
Thinking about it that way it's almost a quite enlightening way to think about it, because with the spread of the internet, we all as customers have become far more connected, far more insightful, far more knowledgeable about the products and services that we're doing business with. And a lot of the times when we go to do business with a company, we know the exact product that we want, we know the exact specification, we know exactly what Glenda from Scunthorpe thinks about it as well. We've done our research, and it's a difficult thing to expect our employees to know all of that stuff. And there's almost been like a massive shift where the customers now know more about our products and services than we ever could. So taking that, and rather than fighting against it, but harnessing it and using it in your own, like using it to really propel the brand, I think it's a fantastic idea, and it's a really, really enlightening way to think about it. But with the spread of the internet, and with more and more people talking about things on social media and leaving reviews on Yelp and other such review sites, when we talk about word of mouth, how has the spread of sort of internet word of mouth really changed things? And when we talk about like is there a word for the internet word of mouth, or is it just all now word of mouth?
I think it's all word of mouth. I think the moment you try to kind of differentiate between word of mouth down the pub and word of mouth on Facebook, I think we've kind of lost the real meaning of it. It needs to occur naturally. I think that there are ways definitely that brands can kind of incentivize word of mouth and encourage it, but it's about giving customers the empowerment and the tools to do so. It's about kind of saying to customers, look, the more you get involved, the more we're going to kind of make you feel special. We're going to kind of raise your expectations as a brand, and we're going to do things to surprise you. That's the best way, and it always has been the best way of really creating true advocates. It's about raising expectations when they don't expect it. So yeah, if someone you found has created we've got customers that are creating websites now about brands because they love them so much. Yeah. It's those people we need to identify and say, they're the true influencers. They're the ones that if we give, the right tools to, they can kind of, take our messaging and deliver it to so many people. And therefore, we're going to start to engage people. I think the other thing that we need to start to look at is then how we track it. And I think that's the bit that brands need to get their head around, because as soon as we start to put return on investment around word of mouth, I think that's when we'll start to see a lot more brands get involved in it.
Well, look, I mean, it brings me on to my next question, really. Like, how do you measure word of mouth? And then how do you measure the ROI of word of mouth?
So it used to be the fact that we could only measure kind of brand mentions. And I think that, that was always a struggle. Because, trying to talk to a finance director about a, £100,000 word of marketing campaign when, you can only measure kind of brand impact and then, some of it was guessing, was only going to go one way. I think now the fact that we can kind of measure social media interactions, but more importantly, we can use tracking links to actually take it all the way from social media interactions to other customers that you may have kind of, told about this brand going on to purchase. And as soon as you can start to equate, marketing spend and revenue to individual word of mouth customers, then you can start to really do some interesting things and exciting things with campaigns. So imagine you kind of identified 2 customers, and one customer has 1,000 followers. The other customer has 400 followers, and they're both sharing messages online. But what you find is the one with 400 followers actually is driving £2,000-3,000 per annum to you, whereas the one with 1,000 followers is only driving £50. Well, all of a sudden you can start to equate kind of more loyalty scheme products and points and transactions and gifts to the person driving the most revenue. So it's about identifying real influencers, people that can drive revenue to your brand, not just people that can spread positive word of mouth. Now they're both important because one increases your brand awareness, helps around Google's 0 moment of truth. So the more people are kind of searching now, I think it's something like 4 or 5 touches before they even interact with a brand because they're doing so much research. So that is important. But finding the people that can drive revenue to your brand, well, that's where I think the holy grail of word of mouth exists.
Well, hang on, bear with me. So what do you feel the best way to incentivize or promote word of mouth is? So to some people, I imagine it could be like, when you go to the gym and there's a poster on the wall that says, hey, recommend a friend or family member and you'll get a free bag or something. And that's a bit crap. Yeah. So what do you think that a better way to do it is?
I think you need to start with people who are genuine and authentic. I think the moment you start to try and kind of incentivize it across the board, it is a moment you've lost. Because to your point, you're saying to every single person, tell Auntie Vera about a great product and services we've got, because we're going to give you, 10% off. Yeah. That's never going to work. So I think, first of all, find people that are genuinely already spreading positive word of mouth. And then I think it's about kind of, doing stuff that aligns to your brand, but maybe not directly involves your brand's products and services. So a company that's doing, this to a great degree is O2. So O2, if they identify brand ambassadors and brand advocates, they invite to, some of their entertainment and their gigs that they're hosting. So it's just a nice kind of, again, surprise and delight. James, thank you so much for, taking your time to, mention us on this blog, answer this problem that one of our customers have had. And, just retweet and like, some of our posts. We want to take you and your wife to Twickenham for the weekend to watch rugby. They know you're a rugby fan. So all of a sudden, that means something to you. And it's something that still aligns to the brand because they are an entertainment brand, even though we're a telco brand. And it makes you feel special. Now, the likelihood of you carrying on doing what you're doing is quite high at that point. So I think it's about incentivizing people in the right way and the right people in the right way. Okay.
So it's almost like try and identify where it's organically happening and then sort of nurture it along a little bit. So is it, again, some of this stuff you could be thinking, oh, is it just about like finding people on Instagram who've got 100,000 followers that take their top off and take photos in sunglasses and things and getting them to talk about it? Is it about identifying those sorts of like big influencers? Or would you think it's more about getting lots and lots of everyday people? I mean, from what you're saying, it seems to be the authenticity is the key. But is there any sort of, is there any use in finding those bigger people that do have hundreds of thousands of people they can reach with one tweet, rather than trying to get 50,000 people who are going to reach like 2 people? Like, what's the balance?
I think it all depends on the brand, the industry, and the target audience as well. I mean, definitely, your big brand influencers, your celebrities, or people that are seen as celebrities on social media have a role to play. You only look at someone like Kylie Jenner, and the fact that one Instagram post can do so much damage to a brand like Snapchat. We live in that day and age. So these people definitely have influence over lots and lots of consumers, probably more than a lot more than advertisement has now as well, and traditional marketing. But I think that for smaller organizations and organizations that need to utilize their marketing budgets in the right way, then I think micro influencers have a massive role to play. So identifying 20, 30 people who have anywhere between 1,000 to 10,000 followers that can deliver your brand in a very authentic way, are the ones that actually can engage on a deeper level. I think a lot of the time some consumers take stuff that celebrities say with a pinch of salt. When people take their time to explain a product and service and talk about be honest and talk about the pitfalls, but also talk about the positives and stuff that sometimes organizations didn't even know that their products could do. Stuff like that is where the real benefits can be found. But it's about working with those people as well, and making sure that you've got everything they need to be able to kind of talk about your products and services in the right way. So a great way of doing that is treating them so it makes them feel special. Invite them onto webinars, where there's only kind of 10, 20 people on that webinar, and you're giving them a glimpse into the future. You're talking about your product roadmap. You're talking about some of the new features that you're going to deliver. They get to use your app before anyone else does. That makes them feel special. That makes them feel that they're part of your group. They're part of your community. It makes them feel like they're actually part of your workforce. And that's where, the key to all of this lies. If you can make a customer feel like they're part of your team, they will tell more and more people about the great things you're doing.
Yeah. Well, it makes a lot of sense. And one thing you mentioned there about like one bad tweet can cause a lot of damage. So first of all, help me set this question up properly. I would think that bad word of mouth is more impactful than good word of mouth. Is that correct? Would you say that's true?
That's still true. Yeah, I think that it's the British public, right? We love a bad story. It's why so many of us read the tabloids. Is because we're looking for something, Schadenfreude. We're looking for something to make us feel better. But I would say that it's about a balance. It's about kind of trying to kind of when things do go wrong, making sure you've got enough loyal customers that actually leap to your defense. I think that when that happens, that negative word of mouth dies very quickly. So you've only got to look at Apple. The amount of times Apple have got something wrong in the last 10 years, is completely been overshadowed by the amount of people that support Apple and leap to its defense. And anytime something goes wrong, now that's where you want to get to as a brand. It's where customers feel so loyal that they won't let a bad thing be said about you.
Yeah. Is there a worry though that in the pursuit of encouraging word of mouth, that you are also opening up channels for bad word of mouth if things go wrong? Is that something that people really need to look out for if they're heading down this journey? And is it something that can be mitigated at all, or does it just come with the territory?
I think it just comes with the territory. But what I would say is you can definitely put communication in place that if something does go wrong, that you can deal with it in the right way. React quickly and be transparent. Be honest. Say why things have gone wrong. And admit fault. Now obviously some brands have to be very careful at admitting fault because of obvious reasons. But I think that coming out and being, as transparent as possible, but keeping people in the loop, telling them that this is why things have gone wrong, this is what you're doing to fix the problems, and over communicating, I think is really important in that sense. Because if you don't do that, then we've seen it with talk, you lose control of the situation. But it's like kind of I guess any form of feedback. You can't only have it one way. If you're gonna encourage people to leave positive word of mouth, of course you're gonna get people that are negative about your brand. But it's about dealing with those in the right way. But again, it's marketing kind of 101. You can't please everyone, right? So it's about kind of finding more of the people that love your brand, and making sure that they can kind of feel part of your journey, than it is about kind of trying to win over some of the people that frankly will never ever be fans of the brand in your engagement.
Yeah, it's solid advice. So I'm going to go back to the whole NPS thing. All right, why are 9s and 10s promoters but 8s aren't? What's that about?
Yeah, I think I've got a bit of an issue with that. I think that the whole scale is subjective, right? There are different cultures to take into consideration, different personas, different environments, emotional factors. What was that consumer's journey like before they interacted with your brand that day? Did they have a particularly negative experience that actually affected the way they looked at your brand? So for me, it's about looking at the words, looking at the words of the customer, looking at the verbatim, and understanding that more than the actual score itself. My advice is always take the score with a pinch of salt. Look at the words of the customers, analyze that information, and start to extract that emotion so you can make rational decision making. I think the moment you start to obsess about the score and increasing Net Promoter Score by say 2 points, just because your bonuses are reliant on it, just because the board are putting pressure on, is the wrong behaviors. It really is. It's about doing the right thing for the customer, and sometimes the right thing for the customer short term is going to affect your Net Promoter Score in a negative way, actually. So it's about looking more as a strategic way of delivering customer experience, and it is about constantly trying to improve your Net Promoter Score week on week. And then, of course, it's the difference between transactional NPS and relationship NPS. There's no point in trying to do word of mouth around transactional NPS, because it's too functional. You do it around relationship NPS, then that consumer's built up enough knowledge about your brand to make a decision either way, whether they want to become a promoter.
Okay, so where do you stand with bonuses being linked to NPS?
I'm against it. I always have been. I think it drives the wrong behaviours. Employees game it. I remember buying a car 4 or 5 years ago, and I got offered a small discount if I was to score the advisor of 10. Now, obviously, I'm not in the game of naming brands, but they weren't to know that I worked in customer experience, and it was a shock to me. And I didn't score in the end at all. And it left me thinking, how many employees are out there doing this because actually they need the bonus. Now, I can understand why people do it. I really can. But that's a problem at board level. The board have set that. It's top down. So, for me, it needs to be about doing the right things for your customers and, of course, your employees as well. Let's not forget that word of mouth exists with employees in this day and age. Look at something like Glassdoor, which has revolutionized the way we look at brands. Every person that goes to look for a job now goes to Glassdoor to check the reputation of that brand. Yeah. And I've probably spoke to 3 or 4 brands in the last 4 months, and one or two of them didn't even know what Glassdoor was. Now, for me, that's kind of, that's not good. We need to understand about the technology that exists around marketing, around customer experience, and not necessarily use it to our advantage, but at least start to communicate and engage with people on those platforms.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I want to get back to you about the employee thing a little bit later, but you spoke about the relationship versus transactional, and of course, we're getting inundated with feedback requests at the moment. Some companies feel that they're the first company to ever come up with the idea of asking for feedback, and so they keep sending and sending. And of course, there's hundreds of companies out there doing that. How do you combat that feedback fatigue?
So I'm gonna steal some messaging from my old company I used to work for called Rant and Rave. So we're definitely kind of experiencing survey fatigue as consumers. You've got to remember that every single consumer of yours is a consumer of many other brands, all vying for their time and attention, all asking for their feedback. And customers are getting pissed off. They're switching off to this. They're saying kind of, every moment of my life I'm being asked for feedback. And consumers don't care. They really don't care. They just want to get on with their lives. Maybe they cared 5 years ago, but it's about making it a natural part of the journey. So I think that we need to pick the moments that matter, not every single moment across the customer journey. I remember seeing one brand recently, and we examined the customer journey and looked at different touch points. And I think 90% of the entire customer journey included some mechanism to capture feedback. Now, I'm pretty sure that those consumers aren't going to be happy about that, and this was an airline, so you can imagine it, can't you? You kind of check in. How was that? You kind of you land. What was the journey like? You check into your hotel, and they probably want to know more and more, and it just becomes laborious.
Yeah.
So I think kind of understanding those moments that trigger the biggest emotions and asking for feedback then is the right approach, as opposed to trying to kind of use a blanket approach to capture feedback everywhere.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. So if we go back to NPS being linked with bonuses, and I think we're both in agreement it's not the way to go about doing it. But let's say there's people out there that are leading customer experience in companies, and it's been passed down from high, and they have to do it. What is the best what is the best way to mitigate the conflict there?
I think you just have to nip it in the bud. I think that you have to kind of, I suppose, as an employee, you probably need to get the message across to the powers that be and say, look, kind of, I'm experiencing as a team leader, for instance, that my employees are demonstrating the wrong behaviours. They're gaming it somewhat. They are thinking too short term, and they're not really understanding how they can kind of impact the customer experience by looking at things that will improve it. So is there any innovations that can be had? Are there any kind of communication strategies that we can put in place to make sure that customers feel more engaged? Are there ways of involving customers in the conversation more, so it becomes a natural part? One of the things that I like to look at is what if employees themselves can become the voice of the customer? How many conversations are going on that are naturally taking place where customers are just saying, I love this about your brand, or you're getting this wrong. Now, they've naturally told someone in the organization about that, but what happens to it? It gets lost. And guess what? In about 2-3 hours, that same customer is going to get a request for feedback. And they're probably thinking to themselves, I've already told someone how I feel, and now you're asking me again. So I think that, we need a balance with all of this. I'm not saying kind of, let's stop asking customers for feedback, but what I am saying is what if we could give employees the opportunity to share some of the feedback that they're experiencing to people in the organization?
I think that's a really good way to do it, because 9 times out of 10, the employees know the problems that are going on in the business, and they also know the good parts of it as well. They know when things go right, and they know when things go wrong. Do you think there will ever be a time where technology gets to the point where it can use historical data on the way that customers act and the way that customers have interacted with companies before to predict NPS scores? Do you think we'll ever get to a place where that can happen, so you don't have to keep asking the customer, but you can use some sort of fancy technology to predict what the score would be based on historical data and the interaction, the actual experience they've had? Do you think is that a thing? Do you think?
It's a really interesting question. I would love to think we can get to that stage. The closest thing I've seen is Shop Direct using AI and historical data to predict when customers along the online journey may churn. So in that sense, I suppose you're looking at a detractor. And what they're able to do is, by understanding, which customers, based on historical data, are likely to do so, they can send personalized opportunities to. So they can say, look, here's 5% off, and it's 5% off this particular product range because we know you've been looking at that.
Yeah.
So there are lots of data points now taking place, especially online and digital, where you can understand customers, you can understand what they're likely to do. But actually, coming to think of it, when we get to that stage and AI is giving us the ability to do so, why would we need NPS? Sure, crazy as it may sound, surely it would be about return on investment. Surely it would be about actually stopping detractors from leaving and encouraging promoters to go on to promote. If you could measure how many detractors actually left and how many promoters actually went on to promote, then the score would be irrelevant. So that would be my kind of, I suppose, take on it.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool if we could get to a place like that. So, like, when it comes to marketing, I'm a dummy. All right, I don't really know very much about it whatsoever. But I hear a lot of people talking about like customer-centric marketing. So can you help me out a little bit? What is the difference between customer-centric marketing and marketing?
I guess kind of customer-centric marketing is really understanding your customer, their needs, their behaviors, their expectations before you start to come up with a marketing campaign. For me, the best marketing campaigns aim to solve a problem. They look at, what is a consumer experiencing, and therefore, how can we get our messaging across in the right way that convinces that consumer that we can sort a problem for them or we can give them a benefit. I think that for me, that is, customer-centric marketing, where we really, really understand our consumers. I think the other side of it, again, is, I suppose, similar to how I described NPS before, a little bit of vanity included in it. So, so they're very good, agencies out there, creative agencies who are doing some great marketing, but it comes from a point of view of, how do we take the brand and do something cool with it, as opposed to actually delivering any benefits to the consumer or telling the consumer that we can deliver benefits or solve a problem. Yeah. I think there's a place for both of them, by the way, because I think the brand marketing needs to be done, especially in the early days of a brand, to make sure that consumers understand it in the right way, get that emotional feeling about it. And then along the journey they're on in, it's about educating them and telling them what it can really do for them. So there are brands that do both, and I think they should continue to do both.
Okay. So it's more focusing on the experience and the feelings and the outcomes rather than the product or service itself and what it does. It's okay. That's a good way to look at it. So with more and more companies fighting for our attention at every turn now. Do you feel it is better to be customer centric when looking at your marketing, or do you need a mixed model? If you go sort of too obscure and people don't even know what it is you're actually selling, is there a danger in that as well? Like, does it need to be a blended model, as it were?
Yeah, I think it definitely needs to be blended, and it needs to be blended around different areas of the organization coming together to collaborate. So, for me, some of the best marketing occurs when marketeers put together a campaign that really plays to, the consumers and understanding the consumers at, their level. But then customer service plays a role in actually answering queries as they come up during the marketing campaign. So if you think about Facebook as a channel, you see an advert on Facebook, you're guaranteed as a brand that people are going to kind of start asking questions. And certain people are going to be, negative towards a brand because they've had a personal experience about the product or service. And it's about making sure that customer service have been involved in the creation of the campaign. They understand it, and they can have conversations with customers to, allay some of those fears, but also talk to people that are, reacting positively and convert them. So I think that, having marketing and customer service work closer together is only going to be a good thing for brands, especially when it comes to social media and digital.
Okay, so you mentioned Facebook in that, and I don't know whether you're going to be able to answer this or not, but it'll be interesting to hear your take on it. So, of course, I don't think anything's been proven, but there's lots of theories around that when sort of partners are having conversations about a certain product or a certain thing, and then all of a sudden they start to see the adverts pop up. Of course, that's quite customer centric. If there are things out there listening to your conversations and then tailoring the adverts to you. So number one, is that actually a thing? Are all of our devices secretly listening to us and then helping companies tailor adverts for the things that we've mentioned? And two, if that is happening, is it a step too far? Are we as customers are we maybe not ready for that just yet? What's your take on it?
Well, that's a really good question. I think that we are getting to the point now where we're starting to see consumers push back on what's going on. So we certainly live in somewhat of an Orwellian state, if you will, where we are being monitored more and more. But it again comes down to transparency and authenticity. I think being kind of, super honest with consumers and saying kind of, we are, listening to you, we are, gathering information on you, but we're doing it, not to push, marketing at you, not to push advertisement at you, even though, a certain aspect of it will include that. But it's about understanding your behaviors so we can tailor the right products and services to you. For me, that's how we can start to utilize consumer data in the right way. But I think that, again, advertising on social media needs to become more part of the conversation, but it does about kind of push tactics. I've seen some very innovative brands employ people whose sole job is to go and kind of hunt down conversations that include their brand and facilitate them. That for me is a great form of conversational marketing, and it's going to get you a lot more than starting to push adverts at people that frankly the consumers are coming so savvy to, they're scrolling past them or they're kind of turning them off. So it's about in ad blockers. We more and more people are installing ad blockers. So what's going to happen when ads disappear altogether? I'm not saying that's going to happen overnight, but we're definitely going to see a backlash from consumers towards brands. So I think the brands that are true are the ones that are going to ultimately win. I think the other side of it is, let's not forget offline. We get so many organizations, talking about kind of social media, talking about digital. But when was the last time you got a really good piece of marketing, customer-centric marketing, through your letterbox? Now, I think that could break through the noise that we're seeing online, because, the amount of emails we get, the amount of, posts we're seeing on social media, is one, not healthy, at a kind of, not just a consumer level, but that's a human level.
Yeah, like at a psychological level.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'll be honest. I struggle to switch off sometimes. And I've had to kind of learn to kind of manage that and make sure that I'm more focused and doing what I need to be doing. But there are so many people that have experienced that. But going back to my point about kind of consumers, it's about kind of thinking, well, what if we can start to look at some of the channels that has worked for us all, throughout history? What about offline events? What about inviting people to come and, take part in an event where you're going to showcase your brand, and you can offer them something that is aligned to your brand, but not directly associated with it. So it's about elevating that brand promise.
So do you think in a world that's flooded with technology, that almost going back to the old school is it's almost somewhat innovative?
Absolutely. I think it's interesting that you use the word innovative there, because I talk to people about innovation all the time. And what surprises me is the fact that everyone automatically thinks innovation, new technology.
Technology, yeah.
It's about doing something in a different way, or a way that's different from your competition that will engage with your audience. So, absolutely, engaging through a letter, running an event, knocking on a customer's door and saying kind of, hello, can I kind of understand about, your experience with our products and services? I'm not here to sell to you. I just want to know a little bit more. That kind of grassroots level, I think certainly has a part to play.
It's kind of cool thinking of it that way, though, isn't it? Like that, and those sort of, let's call them old school techniques, they're readily available to anybody. Realistically, like you and me could go. I mean, it probably wouldn't do us, but we could go door knocking if we wanted to. But it's cool to think that doing something different like that is almost sometimes a little bit easier than trying to keep up with all of the crazy technology at the moment. I love what you're saying about, it's exactly the same. Whenever I work with people and you talk about innovation, they immediately think technology. But some of the most innovative things in the world have not necessarily involved technology. It's just doing things that we already do, just in a different way, or looking at things in a different way. Right. Tell me if you do or do not want to talk about this, or if you've got an insight into this. You might not have an opinion on it at all. Do you know much about this Cambridge Analytica thing that's going on at the moment? Do you know much about it?
I know about it, but I'm not in a place to add any expertise to that. So yeah.
Right, scratched. That didn't happen.
One thing, though, kind of coming off from the last conversation is looking at marketing automation. So one of the things that I've seen a lot of organizations do is try to automate kind of marketing campaigns, whether that's social media or whether that's email communication. But I think, again, to really break through some of that noise is to start to get kind of personal with consumers. So, have people within, your customer service team, your marketing team, your operations team, actually sending one-to-one emails to consumers. Because I think you can, the average savvy consumer can see through an automated email versus something that's actually delivered personally to them. If we think back to marketing and customer service, it's about personal, relevant, and timely communication. And I think automation misses that somewhat. It's very valuable because it saves time, it reduces costs. But I think it's about a balance. It's about letting automation do its thing, letting it engage people and move them on in the journey towards purchase. But at the same time, it's about kind of understanding at the moments that matter when you need to really engage them on a personal, human level.
Do you think, though, that if somebody from O2 dropped someone an email and said, "Hey, Yiannis, just wanted to check how you're getting on with your new phone," do you think people would automatically assume it was an automated one just because of the way that things have been going? Like, how would you make sure that, like, because realistically, getting somebody to sit there sending individual emails out today, that's long, man. that's a difficult thing to do, and it seems mega inefficient. So would it not be demoralizing almost when people would automatically just think it's an automated thing anyway? How would you break through that? How would you make sure that that doesn't happen?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think kind of, looking at kind of chatbots, for instance, it's hard to differentiate between what is a chatbot and what is a human, especially on the example you've just given, what you think of X, Y, Z, whatever it may be. But I think that when you identify, people that may need extra help, they may be vulnerable customers, they may be, customers at a high value, and you send them something that, is truly relevant to them, so you've taken the time to, understand that person, understand their needs, understand their expectations, and send them something that's clearly from a human. I think that that's when you can start to kind of win people over. So I'm not saying it's for every industry, absolutely not. If you're a high transaction industry, low value product, then that's the last thing you want to do. But, there are certain brands, someone like Harrods, for instance. Harrods may want to do that with certain customers because they want to make them feel special. So again, it comes down to the environment, the consumers, and the company itself.
Well, I mean, it'd almost be good if you could encourage the people who have already dealt with a customer to be the people that do that. So, like, let's say you've come into Harrods and you bought some fancy bag. I imagine they sell fancy bags. And then you get an email at the end of the day saying, "Hey, Yiannis, I don't know if you remember me. My name's James, but I sold you that fancy bag today. Just wanted to make sure you got home okay, blah, blah, blah." I don't know what the message particularly is. But do you feel that would be a good way to go? So, because, of course, then that relationship's already been opened and you're just there trying to continue the relationship a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. That would come across in a very authentic way, and it would make the consumer feel special. And like you say, it's an extension.
Yeah.
Dealt with the person, in an offline environment. So it's natural that you get a text message or an email from them, asking them, how they're getting on. That's a great after service experience. And it's one that you're going to probably tell other people about, and you're being looked after. You might have a problem and you can go directly back and get it sorted. So I think that, yeah, you're spot on. It's about making it feel a natural part of the conversation and not alien to the consumer.
Yeah. Okay, so one issue that happens with marketing is customers' expectations are being formed and evolved and progressed every single day with every single interaction they have with every single company. It's not really at a point anymore where my interactions with you as a company are the things that form my expectations. It's my interactions with any company form my expectations. If I have a good service with Apple, I wonder why I can't get a good service on an airline. And marketing have got a big part to play in this as well, because, of course, when it does come to the company side of things, they're usually the people that sort of play the company role in forming customers' expectations. This is who we are as a company. This is what we can deliver. And sometimes the expectation that gets created in the actual delivery aren't there, that they're not the right thing. And maybe that's because marketing tends to be its own function in an organization, and it's a standalone function, and its job is to get the sales or get as many people to look at something as possible. And maybe we can talk about the marketing metrics in a moment. But how do you make it so that marketing isn't just a standalone function in an organization? Or am I wrong and it should be a standalone function and there are benefits to that? What's your take on that?
So I think the first thing is to, as a brand, as a marketeer, is to somewhat under-promise and then over-deliver. I think that is a kind of sound strategy for any organization out there, because, to your point, there are a lot of experiences that we're having as consumers that kind of shape our thoughts of a brand. So I think that kind of by doing that, you're going to get a lot more buying from consumers. And then, sorry, I forgot your second point, James.
About marketing being sort of a standalone function within the organization. Like, how would you make it so that isn't the case? How would you make it so that marketing is everywhere in the organization and everyone's a part of it? Or am I wrong to think that that would be a good thing? And should it be a standalone function? And are there benefits to that?
So I think there are benefits for sure of having a standalone marketing department, because I think that if you look at marketing as a discipline now, it's becoming kind of, I mean, there are so many different functions that are involved in marketing. You've got planning, you've got analytics, you've got creative, you've got design, you've got UX, you've got so many aspects that form marketing, and therefore you need expertise across all of those. But if you look fundamentally at what the role of a marketeer is, it's to facilitate. And I suppose it's very similar to customer experience. We've seen these functions being created within businesses where people have ownership over customer experience over marketing. Now, it's right to have someone that has ownership, because we've seen it with empowerment. If you don't have ownership, people are empowered to do the wrong things.
Yeah.
But I think that where the real benefits happen is where collaboration takes place, is where you've got multiple kind of functions within an organization all coming together to work on campaigns, to work on service strategies. And it really, really kind of, I suppose, is amplified where you've got a clear mission and vision from the top. When you've got clear mission and vision, you've got empowered employees, and you've got collaboration taking place, then all of a sudden, you've got people that are going out with a single voice. So to your point, having a, brand message that says one thing, you can almost guarantee that you've then got employees backing that up. So they're not over-promising. So that for me is key to the whole thing. It's making sure that you've got a single voice within the organization and everyone behind a vision of, being customer focused and being, all getting behind delivering the right thing for the customer, whatever that may be.
Yeah. So something you said sort of started the cogs turning in my brain, which is always dangerous. So you talk about over-promising and under-delivering, and the better way to approach it would be to under-promise and over-deliver. But of course, there are issues with taking that route as well, because if you under-promise and over-deliver, you're then going to create expectations with the customer that no matter what you say, you're always going to go one better. You're always going to deliver that little bit more. And of course, then you're kind of creating a rod for your own back, because then you're probably going to be delivering inconsistent experiences to different types of people. And then the word of mouth means kind of nothing, or it can create the wrong word of mouth where you say, hey, look, if you go and get this thing, they're actually going to give you this thing. And then if you're not consistent with that, it creates its own problem. What do you think the power of accurately promising and accurately delivering is?
Yeah, so it's probably the wrong terminology. I mean, when I said under promise, it was almost don't over promise.
All right, fair enough.
It is, yeah, it's all about delivering that consistency. So it's making sure that what you say you can deliver on. But then it's about kind of, empowering employees to go one better if such an opportunity occurs. Now, a great example of that would be, again, probably the most well-known one, First Direct. So First Directive, if something goes wrong, employees are empowered to do the right thing for the customer, even though that may, start to veer outside of the framework, not the guidelines, because obviously they're regulated financially, but outside the guidelines. And that empowerment obviously enables employees to deliver a great customer experience. But that also then can be said for kind of, positive customers within that journey. If positive customers are, identified by employees, what about saying thank you to those people as well? And again, First Direct, it doesn't have to be, monetary incentives. It can be something that, aligns to the brand values, but actually is personal to the consumer. So, we might know that a consumer, likes going to kind of gigs, and we're going to buy him and his wife a concert ticket. I think it's doing stuff like that genuinely thank customers for what they're doing.
Yeah. That's well, I mean, that kind of nicely brings me on to a little thing I wanted to talk about now. And okay, if you, for instance, if you are just starting out and you don't have any promoters or detractors, or you don't buy into the whole MPS thing at all, how do you basically empower your employees to be your promoters? How do you make it that your employees are going out there spreading the good word, not sort of like forcing them to, because of course that's going to be fake, it's not going to be authentic, but what is it you can do internally that makes your employees want to go and spread the word?
I think it's about kind of, you know, having conversations with those customers, getting to know them, and understanding, you know, what they like, what they dislike, what ideas they've got. You know, have they got ideas that are truly transformational? You know, stuff that you could take into your, you know, R&D department, or maybe you haven't got an R&D department. So, you know, it can be something that you can take straight to the CEO and say, you know, a customer's just come up with this idea. Do you know what? I believe, as an employee talking to customers all the time, that this could impact so many customers. You know, can't we give it a go? You know, then it's about validating that idea, doing the research behind it, and then prototyping it, taking it and testing it with consumers. You know, I think that because we live in such an agile, you know, world, you know, being able to kind of, you know, test a theory or test a product even has become a lot quicker. So therefore you can kind of validate your assumptions a lot better. So I think, yeah, it's about just getting close to customers. You know, if that's on social media, you know, it's about kind of, you know, just asking questions and you know, responding to people and being genuine, not trying to sell to people, but just trying to kind of be part of the conversation and knowing when not to be part of the conversation as well. So there'll be times on social media, you know, where, you know, consumers are interacting with, you know, prospects, or consumers are interacting with consumers. You will be able to see straight away whether that's the right opportunity to jump in and have a conversation with, you know, because if it's about something where, you know, the conversation's flowing, the last thing you want to do is jump in. If it's a problem you've identified that you might be able to solve, then yeah, of course, get involved.
Perfect. Well, great stuff. Look, we'll call it there. Thank you so much for being with us today. Just before we do wrap up, can you let people know how they can stay in touch with you and how they can get in touch with you if they want to talk about this a little bit more?
Yeah, of course. So you can find us on Twitter at We Are Alchemy. And also you can go to our web address, which is www.alchemy, that's ALCMY.xyz. So that's alchemy.xyz.